It's the Sick Show. It's the Sick Show.
It's the Sick Show.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Schick Show. I am Scott Schick, your host, and today I'm with Hal Bowman. This guy is he is an absolute rock star. He's been so beneficial to me as an educator, and he's been crisscrossing the nation, just trying to teach them up, man. Trying to put the word out, working, studying, consulting with the very best educators. Here he is. What's been going on? You're crazy busy.
Yeah, man, doing the thing, trying to resuscitate and teach your souls and keep them in the game and keep them out of the furniture business is really what I'm trying to I'm trying to do.
I'm having a hard time looking at you right now because it's like not real to me. So I started teaching in 2014. I ran
Yeah.
into your stuff around 2018,
Oh,
and
nice.
I was like, oh man, like I was finally somebody hit me where I needed to be hit, and somebody I could connect with, and that made sense to me.
Yeah.
And I'd been listening to I think the guy's name's Bill Simmons out of
Mm-hmm.
Michigan. I think he's the Teacher of the Year guy. Uh, best year ever.
I don't. Okay, got it.
Best year ever. And he had this coin thing, and I'd met him at Ball State when I was at Ball State. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, good, a guy with super big energy, and it's not snapping everywhere and, and doing all this fun stuff. Just somebody
Right.
real that I could connect with. And then you came along, and I'm like, ah, holy crap. So I'm not the only person out here just being real
Yeah.
and not trying to be something they're not. And I've always kind of had this authentic mentality about what I was trying to get across as a teacher. But
But listen, dude, if that's who's something like I have a friend, she's a principal and she's all about, she's got confetti cannons every day and she's throwing glitter up in the air but here's the thing, that's really her.
yeah,
Like she
right.
ain't faking it.
Right.
And all the teachers I teach for her, that's really them. Like that's not a fit for me. But
Bingo.
listen, thank God that they have her and they have each other. And if it's really them, I'm more power to them. Get after it, man. But I think like that's the thing for teachers, I want people just to be authentic and completely congruent with who they are and what they say. Because if you're not, like kids sniff that shit out and they know it, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's not who you really like. They don't know what it is, but there's something about you I don't trust.
That's true. That's true. I remember my first 2 weeks of teaching, and I was with sixth graders. I was teaching sixth grade science, so I have an elementary background, and
Mhm.
I found out pretty early on elementary wasn't me.
Yeah.
I love the little kids, I do, but I'm a junior high teacher. And that's where I spent all 9 years. I was an educator. I spent as a junior high teacher, and then previous to that, coaching girls softball, and it was with 10 to 14, 16 year olds, and it just made sense for me. It's
Yeah.
kind of who I am still, I guess. And I got super excited about it when I got in the junior high class. But that sixth grade class, 2 weeks into it, I just looked at them and I said, "Is this working for you?"
Right.
And they're like, "No." And I said, "Me either. We're going to start all over. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry I failed you, but I promise you deserve better, and I'm going to do everything I can to make this class awesome." And we spent the
Yeah.
next week or so just kind of figuring it out together. And that was a great experience, especially I was 40 when I started teaching. So I came into teaching after spending a decade as a repo agent. So,
Nice.
so the discipline thing, I wasn't real worried about it. I was okay
Right.
with being yelled at, and but so gosh, man, I have so many things, and when I sent you that message, I was like, I'll send you what I'm thinking, and you're like, nope, we're going into this thing.
Let's go cold, baby. Dude, let me tell you why. By the way, are we recording yet?
We've been recording the whole time.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So these dudes, there was a trying to make it anonymous. There's another podcast, and they sent me a list of questions, and I said, "Hey, I'm cool, no thanks." And they said, "No, we want you to know." I said, "No, I'd just rather go. Let's just go. Let's see what
I love
happens."
it.
Here's why. So I went back and listened to a couple of episodes, and I'm not kidding. So they have they're interviewing a lady, and they asked, "How'd you get into teaching?" And she says, well, both my husband and I are teachers. And they said, well, had that happened? She says, well, one night we were out in Area 51 trying to break in. And he was there and we met, and we were both teachers. And he goes, oh, okay. And moves on to the next question. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like,
You got
you
to
just
ask about that.
how could you skip over breaking into Area 51?
You can't. That's so true. Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, man. I'm still having trouble looking at you. It's just so you know, this is just like it's almost a fanboy moment. You know
No.
how weird that sounds. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
man, I've been so appreciative of you and what you did for my teaching career and keeping me on track with being who I am. And actually, I've got an authenticity podcast um, that is out July 2nd, and it's all about are you for real? Are you for
Yeah.
real? And kind of that journey into becoming our real selves. And man, teaching has taught me so much about that, about being real.
Dude, it's everything. When years ago, when I first started this whole professional development thing, it was always the idea of what do we want from kids and this, and who do we need to be for that? And was always this idea around respect. And I get it, that's a huge thing. But now it's more so like it's being real. Like that's how we earn the right to be respected. And I know that sounds crazy. Wait, I have to earn the right to be respected. Well, in a kid, in the mind of a child, yes. Like as adults, no, because you're a human being, and that's enough for me. But as a child, like it's to be completely real and authentic in everything we do and say in front of them, so that we can earn the right to be respected. And the reason, man, the reason I think it is because like when you and I were growing up, like we respected our teachers for a couple of reasons. One was because our parents told us to, and
That's
and
it.
that's a and
That's
like
all it
if you
took.
didn't do it, you'd suffer. And so, but the other reason the reason I respected my teachers was because I didn't know the truth. Like when I'm old, like back in the 70s when I was in school, I thought adults were awesome and should be respected because that's what I was told. Because we didn't have the internet, we didn't have
Right.
Google, we didn't have around the clock news. And this is a generation, a kid that sees the fall from grace of the most respected people on the planet daily. Like, think about what they know. They know about the craziness that's happening in politics, and these are supposed to be the most respected people of our society. They see, you know, professional athletes and Hollywood stars get caught up in cheating scandals and all in drugs, and they're arrested for. And like this, these are the most respected people. Like, think about like Bill Cosby. Like he's the most prolific rapist of a
Oh,
generation. Think
man.
about Tiger Woods. He has hookers on speed dial. Lance Armstrong is cheating, and like these are the most respected people. And look what they did. So when we stand before kids as a teacher, mind of a child, they're thinking, dude, there's no telling what you're capable of. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Based on all that they've seen.
home
And so
run.
I think, man, I think being authentic, like that thing of authenticity is the most critical foundation that we have upon which we can build a successful teaching career.
And it has to be with ourselves.
Oh,
If you're not going to be
dude.
real with yourself, you're never going to be able to project that. And you
Yeah.
were first thing you said was kids are going to sniff that out, and you're right. They're they know it. They know it before
Yeah.
we know it sometimes, It's
Right.
like as an administrator, I was able to sniff out what was going on if a teacher was getting ready to leave or something, and I would be like, "Where are you going?" And what are you
Yeah.
talking about? What? I'd ask a principal that one time. I knew she was leaving. I just felt it. And I just went in and I said, "Hey, I know you haven't told anybody, but
Mhm.
what are you doing next? Where are you going?" And she's like, "What? What are you talking about?" I said, "You're going somewhere."
Yeah.
Sure enough, like 2 weeks later, she put in her notice. But but kids sniff that out. They know. They
Yeah.
know. You're playing me, dude.
That they've quit a long time ago, but they're still showing up at the classroom.
Boy, and how much behavior we see, just watching that behavior piece. I'm sure your classroom is similar to mine. I didn't have a whole lot of behaviors.
No,
Uh, maybe two
you don't.
kids a year, came out of my classroom for something, maybe. And it had to be
Yeah.
big. It was going to have to be big. Uh, I just handled it.
Yeah, that's what I always say, man. It just about what did I say? It just about takes a felony for me to write up a kid. Like, you got to break a law
That's
in
it.
addition to the school rule. Because like here's the thing, when I was telling, I was telling some teachers, like, like what if in my neighborhood here, anytime my son got in trouble, which was a lot, what if I said, that's it, I am calling the homeowners association and they're going to take care of that behave like
Right.
I would never do that because it's
Man.
my house. This is my family.
Ah,
These are my kids. It's the same thing in the classroom, man. This is our family. It's our house, man. This is our family.
that's right.
I, I'm in a leadership role just because I've been on the planet a little longer than you. That's about it. I'm going to facilitate what happens, but we're all in this together. Never. Listen, I've had to do it. I mean, I've had to just because I thought somebody's mom was going to get mad if I didn't write
That's
them up.
right. That's right.
But we handle it in here, man. This is our house.
Yep. I'm with you 100%. I've always felt like when, as a teacher, that moment I put eyes on them, they're mine. They're mine. And everything that happens is my responsibility. And I want it handled. And then as a principal, as soon as they pulled on our property, if there was trash on the ground, that's my fault. When they pulled up, if they weren't getting through the I was always a drop off line guy, drop off and pickup line, always. I'm out front. I remember a few years ago you were talking about the guy in Texas. I think it was in Fort Bend County somewhere. Jumped on a hood, and I was like, "Oh man, that's me. I'm that guy." Like people going the wrong way in my drop off line, I'm standing out in the middle about getting hit, and they're looking at me like, "What? What am I supposed to do?" Like you're supposed to follow the rules, just like the other 400 people just did. I'm not asking anything special. Just let's all do the right thing, and it's all about safety. I'm willing to put my life on the line for your kid when they're here and when they're not here. Please respect that. Oh my God, that video. That was bananas. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that.
That was wild. But it is important, dude, because like, unless the thing is, if you spend a school year doing pick up and drop off, especially elementary, like you're gonna see some, and I get it. I'm not judging anybody, brother. Like, but mom is busy and dad's busy, and they're on the phone and they're texting and they're trying to get stuff handled. And they got kids and they're late. And like I know, man, I got a family. It's wild. But until you see some kid getting out of the car and the door shut and the kid's backpack strap is still stuck in the car door and dad's taking off, like until you have that panic moment, like you really don't know what the drop off line is really about. You know what I mean?
It's scary. Pickup's wild too. Pickup was wild at our school. It just took somebody out there directing traffic for a minute.
Right.
It's really crazy to me how worried about safety parents are until they're in a hurry.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what are you talking about?
Right. Yeah. But it always is funny. What I saw something with some meme the other day talking about crazy parents, and not that all parents are crazy, but some of them are. And it was talking about, if you don't think they're crazy, then explain to me why they line up for pickup 2 hours. They don't have to spend an extra 10 minutes in line.
What's going on with that?
Right? I don't know.
It blows me away. I would go out for to put cones out an hour early, and there they are, already sitting, waiting. It's insanity. But that's that accountability thing, man. Just taking ownership of our kids and of that behavior and the procedures and that safety. And I think it's just part of being. I think it's part of being authentic. When you take it seriously, it's who you are. And, man, I could go on and on about just safety stuff. But so what's going on with you? I haven't even gotten to. You've been a little bit quiet on social media.
I just kicked it off. Here's the thing, dude. I just got so burned out, man. Just on, I don't know. I think just the COVID thing and just the, everybody's tribed up on their beliefs and, conservative and liberal and vaccinated and not, and like the whole thing. And then I think I was just a little bit demoralized and just the arguing, and it's felt like oftentimes I was fueling the fire rather than contributing something positive. So I took a break. But now, as of last week, I think I got back on. I've been doing some posting. I'm going to post a video today. And And I think I'm back in, man. And I'm gonna try to take a ghost and post and ghost approach to it, where I just kind of get my stuff out there, and whatever
Uh-huh.
happens, happens. And I'm gonna try to figure out how to reframe this social media so I feel like it's a positive contributing force in my life and the lives.
And I agree with that. I certainly think it is. And one thing, as being an educator, I stopped reading any comments. I stopped reading
Yeah.
the local. I live in a little town called Hartford City, and there's Hartford City happenings, and I'll get on there every once in a while and just read through it. But I haven't taught in my town in a number of years. But the other little towns and the little areas I've been in. You can kind of get hung up in it. The McDonald's ice cream machine is broken in every city every day, and
Right.
we got to get over it. But I've started my podcast as just a positive influence, and honestly, it's been therapeutic. Just to get some ideas out of my own head. I think we get
Yeah.
stuck in our own head, just thinking about all the ideas. I think you and I are probably a lot alike in that, to where it's always going. It never stops, and I continue to think, oh, what about this? And I've got a whole book of things. This is my Make It Happen book, and this came from one of my PDs I was in, a lady named Rhonda Rose. Yeah. And it's just, I keep writing ideas down, and man, that thing is, and I carry it around sometimes and almost looks like a Bible. Yours does too. It's like a little, but it
Yeah.
is kind of our personal Bible of sorts, where
Yeah.
ideas, start to manifest, and you just start cultivating what's going to happen now, what's going to happen now. And yeah, so you're back on doing PD.
Yeah, man, I'm doing a ton of it. This year has been crazy, just awesome and exciting, and sometimes heartbreaking. But so yeah, I'm out there, and it's never been needed more.
I
I
agree.
think in the past people have really wanted it, but now I think they desperately need it. And I think teachers are really looking to try to figure this out, like what this thing is really all about. I think prior to COVID, we're just kind of going through the motions and doing the thing, and we're up there in front of the class. We've accepted this honor and privilege, and we're doing it and teaching. And COVID really changed everything, especially in terms of what this teaching thing is all about. Because what we discovered, which something we always knew about, but it was in the back of our mind, and it brought it to the forefront of our mind, was that these kids they have access to everything.
Everything.
Like they have the information. I was about to hold up my cell phone, but I can't reach it. Like on their cell phone, like whatever you want to know, they got it.
Yep.
I mean, from the app in math class where you just hold the camera over the problem and it gives you the solution on the screen of your phone, to Google Translate for Spanish class. And
Chat
I mean,
GPT.
yeah, that thing, dude. If teachers haven't played with Chat GPT, you have to get
You
on there.
have to.
It is wild, man. Like so kids have access to all the traditional stuff. So we really got to this point where they are desperate to talk about, what do I really want for my kids? And I've been talking about this thing for 15 years, and people thought I was crazy, but now we're at a point where we have to talk it. Listen, they have like, once kids get basic skills for reading and understanding information and synthesizing information, they have everything they need. Like at about like a junior high reading level, if they can get a math, and they got everything at their fingertips. So as a result of these kids spending their lives with you, the most influential they're ever going to have, it's you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want for your kids? Like, what's the real lesson that these kids are going to talk about 30 years from now when they're at the reunion, and they're going to think, you know what it was in that class? You know who I am today because of her, because of him? Do you know how I parent my kids because of what I learned in that class? That's what teaching has really come to for me. Listen, I want to put the knowledge into the noggin for sure. I want to send the kid out the door with all the skills and the technical abilities for sure. But none of that is going to matter if we're not able to have a strategic impact on that kid's character and who they're becoming as a human being. And like,
Mm.
if you signed up to change a kid's life, if you signed up to be the most influential person in the lives of human beings and like shift the trajectory of a kid's life, like this is the time. Like this is the Super Bowl. There's never been a better time than that, than right now for that.
I think about how through COVID, you go to Google Meet education, right?
Yeah.
I'm air quoting. People can't see on my podcast. I don't video like yours, but I'm air quoting everybody. But during that time, think about that kid that's at home. Mom and dad it's the first time they've been educated, or like in a classroom since they graduated high school, and it sure didn't look like that when you and I, or even in their parents were in school, and they are having the internet issues,
Yeah.
the on and off, the reconnection, can't find it. The kid can find it in 2 seconds. They ain't
Yeah.
kidding me, man. The kid knows exactly where it is. And they're like, oh, Mom, I can't find it. I'm supposed to click here. And Mom's like, well, you're clicking there. And then all of a sudden they start hearing their first teacher, their parent, talking to them about, well, this is terrible. I can't even believe they're making you do this. And
Right.
and I'm sure there was some great stuff going on there too. But I'm thinking about, poor, and Timmy's always my person, because, well, Timmy's just my guy and Sally's my girl, and Timmy's sitting there listening to Mom or Dad or Grandma or Aunt or sister or whoever it might be, trying to help them get connected, trying to find that lesson on Google Meet, and they start, and their frustration starts to come out through that process. Maybe not day one, maybe not day two, maybe not day 15, but probably somewhere around there, where it's like, this is terrible. I'm so sick of this. And they start chattering into those kids' ears, and that's what they're hearing from now their
Yeah.
very first teacher. And boy, those kids that were, third, fourth grade at that time are now seventh, eighth graders, and that's who I was seeing, were the seventh, sixth, seventh, eighth graders that were coming through. And those kids have a different outlook on education than maybe their peers that are a few years older, that,
Yeah.
it's new. This is a tough time for all of us. So we've got to really regroup. And I think what you were talking about earlier, rebuild that idea of what an adult is in a child's life. And it was a perfect segue you were hitting into. I thought you were going to nail it for a second, but just relationship building. Relationship
Oh
building,
yeah.
I don't think has ever been any more important. And I wrote a note here just to remind myself, but I'd interviewed for a principal position a while back, and one of the things I was asked, what do I feel my biggest strength is? And I said, relationships. I've doubled down on relationships. I've doubled down on the idea that my relationship, not only with the student, but with the parent, with the teachers, with the custodians, with the local people, anybody that is anywhere looking at me as the educational leader, I have doubled down on that relationship. I didn't end up getting that position. And I always follow up, and say, hey, what were you thinking? What was something that stuck out to you that maybe I could brush up on, do differently, or, I need to do better? And they mentioned to me, well, when you said you doubled down on relationships, that's when it kind of ended for me. And I thought, what?
Thanks for not hiring me.
Well,
That's what
yeah.
I
I
would
mean,
say.
in the long run, yeah, it was like, really? I mean, I can't think of anything more important than that relationship. That kid likes, trusts, and respects you. You could tell them the sky is green, and they're gonna love on
Like
you.
right now, dude. Right now, it's the only thing that matters. When I'm talking about as a precursor to all that we want to do as a teacher, like I really want to have this kid to have a command of this information. I want this kid to own the information, not just to know it for the test, but know it for the rest of his life. Like I want this content to become wrapped up in the double helix of this kid's DNA forever. In addition to that, I want this kid to identify his core values and take that on and live his life authentically according to those core values. Why he has all this new content in his head.
Mm.
And if any of that's going to happen, man, the first variable in that formula is relationships to connect with that kid on such a level. So like every cell of that kid is consumed with the belief that this is my teacher. This is the guy that believes in me and loves me and trusts me
Ah,
and is not going to give up on me. And yeah, I am your teacher. And yeah, when I get in trouble, no, I'm not writing you up. No, you're not going anywhere. Sit down so I can change
that's
your life.
that's
Like I
right.
want that kid to feel it, man. And once you get to that point, like that's when we have, it's not, and people call it buy-in, but it's not that the kid has bought in, and they realize that I'm the one who has invested
Hmm.
in that kid's life, and
Hmm.
they know that this teaching thing, like we call it, like when we say, all right, I'll be your teacher this year, like that's like the double whammy, monumental, epic lie of the century. Cause yeah, I'm your teacher, sort of. I mean, you can call it that, but that's just like one ingredient in the recipe. The
Man,
rest of it, I'm your confidant, I'm your guide, I'm your leader, I'm your crazy uncle, I'm your mom, I'm your best friend. Like on and on. And it's not just this year. It like we'll be together for the rest of our lives.
it,
You're going to remember me, and I'm going to think about you forever.
I have a former teacher. I live on a golf course, and um, I moved in last year, and I'm out back working on my yard, and here comes this golf cart riding along, and I look over and I recognize that it's Mr. Bergdahl. And Mr. Bergdahl was my science teacher in high school, and I'm like, oh, Mr. Bergdahl. And he's like, Scott, it's Dave. Call me Dave. And I'm like, I'm struggling with that. I still can't. And like I taught with his wife, and she's still Mrs. Bergdahl to me because she was one of my teachers too. I struggle, like even man, I struggle with it. And he insists that I call him Dave, and I can't. I'm having trouble saying it right now, and he's not even in here. It's always going to be Coach Hugan. It's always going to be Coach Sutton. It's. I love those people. Tearing up a little bit on that one because they love me.
Yeah,
As mean as Mrs. Hughes was, and God rest her soul, she just passed away. I love that lady because she cared enough to make it hard. She cared enough about me and my peers to make things hard for us so that we would remember them.
yeah,
You know, ah, and it was that relationship that we had that I still hold on to. You
sure.
know,
And that's why we can, for some bizarre reason, we can remember crazy information and content about that
so
class that we
so
didn't even care
much,
about. Like, I
so
don't
much.
care that gold is AU on the periodic table, and I'll never use it, but it's still for some reason locked in
That's it.
because of the relationship we had with Miss Snyder in that class.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I remember Mr. Coy bringing in a coyote. And in Indiana, coyotes were kind of not extinct, but very rare back in the late 80s, early 90s. And when Mr. Coy brought in a coyote that had been hit out on the road, it was a big deal. But
You, you can't do that stuff nowadays.
no, no. Well, I had a teacher I worked with, Mr. Allen, that he'd go out hunting, he'd shoot a deer, and he'd bring that like the deer heart, the deer lungs, all that stuff in,
Yeah.
so the kids could touch it, smell it, feel it, see it. And some of the kids were like, "Ugh," the other kids were like, ew, and it might be the first time that kid who's never had someone in his family shoot an animal, but he ate it all. I mean, it was consumption. It was an educational thing for him,
Yeah.
but it might be the first time that kid has ever experienced that, and it might light that fire. And I always think about that piece too. You light that fire in some kid, and it's a game changer forever.
Yeah.
That could be that turning point. You
And I
know,
think that as educators, man, that's what we all want. When it comes down to it, like, I don't care what the kid's thing is. All I want is for this kid to find his passion, whatever he loves,
find a
and
thing.
fuels his soul and contributes to the greater good. And whether that he wants to be a teacher or a police officer or she wants to be a scientist or what, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Just what fuels them and passionate about it and want to do it for the rest of their lives to serve mankind. Like that's what it all comes down to.
100%. So I'm wondering, and this kind of off there, because man, I get so much I want to talk to you about. Like we could be on here all day, and I know.
Just do it, man. I got time. Let's go.
So you had a podcast, and it was rolling. Are you bringing it back?
Yeah.
I thought I saw it on your
Yeah, I'm gonna bring it
website.
back. Yeah, for sure. We're gonna bring it back, and we got some guests lined up, and again, just like you said, it might be just more for me, than anybody else. I don't know if any, and that's the weird thing about podcasting. You can kind of tell. I mean, there's some data on who's listening, not who, but where they are and how many and all that. But but it was interesting podcasting this be in some airport somewhere and somebody walk up and ask you about it. I was like, what? You're listening? I had no idea
That
people
is
were listening.
bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, bringing it back, man. And I think, for me, what I'm really focused on is having just those everyday teachers, like those anonymous American heroes that are on the front line of our nation's leaders who are sitting in our classrooms today. And because I think people forget, man, these are just everyday heroic men and women in the trenches teaching school, and no one's telling their story. We have a lot with people that stand on stage, or podcasters or authors, and they're teachers, and or they have this crazy Instagram following because they have a cute classroom and they have great eyebrows or whatever. But no one's talking about like the everyday teacher just doing the thing relentlessly, educating and loving kids, not giving up, loving them relentlessly. And like I want to get back to telling their stories.
I love that. One of my first guests was a good friend of mine. He was my mentor teacher, but he was also a friend of mine growing up. His name's Tommy Simpson. He's two-time teacher of the year here in Blackford County, and Tommy has a great story. You talk about the whole Rockstar thing. He was a rapper.
Yeah.
When he was younger, like legit rapper, had been in a room with Lil Jon at one point, and at some showcase up in Chicago, and guy's just incredible, has a great personality, and he's 100% down on building relationships. Understands the accountability piece. He's himself in the classroom. But we were just on here talking about pet peeves, and we spent a little bit of time talking teaching, but then we just talked pet peeves. It was just fun to talk to like regular people and
Yeah.
to find out, regular people are rock stars, and in their sometimes in their own mind. I'm a rock star in my own mind. I don't know if you can see on the back wall in my camera, but I was in a band years ago. But so I'm my own little rock star. But as an educator, we're a rock star to somebody. And I can remember doing PD with my staff and just talking about there's someone in that room that's watching and listening and hearing everything you're saying, and they'll never tell you how much you mean to them. Never. But they're there. And whether that boy or that girl is in the back, just taking it all in and going, man, that person, they mean so much to me. They're consistent. They're themselves. They're everything I want to be. They're actually up in front of people. And I'm the church mouse in the corner. They're watching you. And that moment when you act out a character, it impacts them in a great way. But all those other times when you are just being true and working your craft, and teaching is, I think, 2 parts science, 8 parts art. I really believe in the art of teaching. There are times when I look at my degree and I'm like, why is this a bachelor's of science?
Right.
This is an art form, what we do. And I wish it was BS, BA, so you got to hit on both. But man, teaching for me was really incredible. And there are times I feel like a little bit of a comet. I flew in really hot, and I don't know that I'm done.
Yeah.
There are times when we're sitting here talking right now, I'm like, God, man, I'm gonna miss.
Yeah, I still think about it, man. I still want to go back. I've been on stage for a long time now. I've been traveling and doing hundreds and venues and schools and districts and conferences a year, but there's not a day I don't think, because there's one thing I've never taught and I really want to, is I really want to teach elementary school PE. I want to be the gym teacher in the elementary school, man. Because if you think about it, like this is when a lot but the vast majority of elementaries, they have very few, if any, men. I'm talking like strong,
So true.
virtuous, character-driven
Yeah.
men standing before kids, modeling what it looks like to be a great dad and be a great values based human being. And in that room, everybody can have fun. Everybody can be successful. Everybody can be a champion. Everybody, and like I really want to do that. And also getting back to it, man, like what you're saying, the difference between the science and the art. Listen, dude, I really wish it was a science. I really wish there was some sort
Oh
of
man.
formula to make it easy. But that's the thing, and that's why teaching. I know you get more. I think I shouldn't say I didn't get better. I got better each year. Yes, maybe I just was more experienced. But the thing is, come across kids you never even imagined was a possibility, a
Mhm.
personality, a learning style. And so like that's the beauty. That's where the art comes in because like what worked perfectly for this kid's sister last year is not going to work anything for this kid that we have this year. And so that's the art of it is how can I take my content and my teaching strategy and manipulate it and form it and mold it so I can deliver this content to this kid so that I can impact this kid's life. You know what I mean? I'm talking about creating that relationship, building the connection so I can deliver my content in such a way that I can impact that kid's character. Like that's complete art.
There's no better feeling. I mean, there's very few things that are better feeling. You know what I mean? I mean, as a dad and as a husband, like I get those rewards, but boy, when as a teacher, as a professional, so and
Yeah.
I've been very blessed to have different professions. Um, there's never been anything more rewarding than that light on moment. You know, that kid that no one else has reached, and you found it.
Yeah.
You found the switch, turn that kid on, and even if it wasn't academically, but you just see a change. You see them all of a sudden, you know, maybe the kid that didn't care about anything or had that appearance they didn't, because I think every kid cares.
Yeah.
You know, but when that light comes on and you see it, and you know that there's something you have done, and who knows what it is. Right? Sometimes you're like, I don't know what the heck just happened, but something did,
Exactly.
you know? But you see that kid all of a sudden engaged, caring, you know, just pumping out something that proves to you and everyone else and more than anybody themselves that they do care, that they are worth it. And that's the prize is when a kid realizes they're worth it that maybe never did.
Yeah, man. You know, and the crazy part is, like you said, you never know what's going to be that magic ingredient for that
Mm.
particular kid on that particular day. I can't tell you how many times I'll see some kid I taught 30 years ago. And this is also the scary part. And we'll be talking and catching up, and the kid will go, "Oh my gosh, I'll never forget this." And they'll tell this story. And I'll just smile and nod and go, "Yeah." But I have no idea what they're talking about. None. I don't remember any of that.
Are you good with
But
names?
that
I'm
right.
terrible with names.
Uh, I can here's the way it goes for me. I can recognize a kid because now dude, now the kid's 42, you know, and I can see it in the eyes. But then I can start, okay, what class were they in? And I can picture who
Mhm.
was around them. And usually if I can get enough detail on what year and what school class and who else is there, where they sat in the room, I can get to the name usually. But these kids will say, I'll never forget the time and I have no idea what they're talking about, but
Mhm.
they talk about how it's impacted them, and which is great. But also, I think, how terrifying is that? Like, what else have I said or another teacher said that impacted a kid negatively? Maybe I was
Right.
being silly and sarcastic, but I didn't know what the kid was going through at the home, and now that's in the kid
Boom.
equally influential, just in a negative way. Like that's terrifying as a teacher.
Oh, and we both know well enough that a kid, all of our brains, not just a kid's brain, but that negative piece is so much
Yeah,
more powerful than the positive piece.
especially at that age.
Oh Lord, man, and that scared me to death. That there was going to be a moment where just something came out of me that did impact them negatively long term. I can
Yeah.
clean something up. Like I'm pretty good feel for what's going on, and I can clean up pretty quickly. But what about the kid that didn't show it and I didn't catch it? And you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you look around the room, you know when that kid's like, oh, you, and gives that look and or just that feel. It's almost like some nonsense, nonsensing sense that we have when it's just happened poorly.
Yeah. And I got way more hypersensitive to it for sure after I had my own kids.
Oh, yeah.
And listen,
Yeah.
dude, there's no telling. Like looking back when I'm in the classroom at 22, and by the way, I had no business teaching anybody anything when I was 22. But there's no telling what kind of nonsense I spouted out in the middle of class to try to get some kid to be quiet, you know?
Right.
But once you do it enough and you can see, oh my gosh, I just like I hurt the kid's feelings,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And then when you have your own kids and you become hyper aware and sensitive to their feelings and how other things affect them, like, oh my gosh, that's when,
Yeah.
teaching really changes.
I remember that moment when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm yelling at a kid. I yelled at a kid, like, and it. I know it happened early on. I was a dean for a couple years, and I was terrible. I thought, you got to be as a dean, you got to be that guy.
Yeah.
Nobody had taught me differently. And my first year as an assistant principal, I was so thankful for the principal I had, the most caring, patient man that I'd ever known. His name's Dan Grill, and Dan was just so patient, and he never raised his voice. And I was like, ah, he's so good. Like, and it
Yeah.
changed how I approached everything, um, in almost every aspect of my life. It was just a game changer. And here I am, and he's younger than me. And we would always joke that I was his mentor. And I was the first year AP. He's like he'd been an administrator for a few years, and he's my principal. He hired me, but we would joke around about I was his mentor. Man, he taught me so much, and here I was at my mid 40s, and I'm still learning. That lifelong learner in me is still picking up things and looking for someone in my life that had knowledge I didn't possess. And for a long time I've had the approach that you know everyone I talk to has knowledge I don't have, and just listen very closely. Think about what they're saying, how they're acting, and take that in. And just like this conversation here, how do I take away from this and learn from you so that I can then just be a better human being ultimately. I mean, that's what we're all trying to be, just the best human being we can be. And that's why I want to have you on the show anyway. I mean, that was the whole thing. Was I thought, man, this guy is just striving to be the best human being he can be, and he's out there, and I'm using your words, shouting it from the rooftops to get everybody else to listen. And I'm very envious, man. And so, thinking about that part of it, what what does that look like? What does that look like when Hal Bowman comes to our school to work with our teachers, our school, our kids on school culture? Because school culture is huge to me.
Yeah, man, this has been the challenge of schools everywhere and classrooms and teachers. It's been such a big challenge, and there's a lot of reasons. And I think one of the challenges we have right off the bat is somehow along the way, and I don't know where this happened, maybe when things got really cooking on the internet, a while, groups and on Facebook groups for principals and leadership courses and all that stuff. But somehow we got it stuck in our mind that this one person, this magical wizard at the front of the building who has the big office, the principal, is going to be in charge of school culture. Like this one person with 1,000 people on campus, and we're running transportation. We have healthcare on campus. We're feeding. We have nutrition for kids. We have after school activities. We're trying to teach them something during the class. Like all that's going on, and this one person is going to be in school culture. Like that blows my mind. And for like this last year and this coming year, I want teachers to take that back.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, man, like years ago when I first started teaching in the 90s, I can't even tell you the name of my principal for like the first 10 years because I didn't need them. I don't know who they were. It didn't matter to me. It was like, listen, man, turn the lights on, unlock the door in the morning, feed the kids in the middle of the day, put them on the bus when we're done, lock up after we leave. Like I'll handle it. I got it. I didn't need them, so I don't even.
Mhm.
But it's for some reason it's like we become so dependent on this one personality that we think is going to drive culture. And I get, yes, they're a total influential force, but here's what we all know. I guarantee you, I don't care. And I know this sounds crazy. I don't care what's going on the campus. When you come into my room, it's a whole different
Yeah,
place, man.
I'm
When you
100%.
cross the threshold and you come through my door and we close it and lock it behind us, this is our family. This is our world. And for my kids, man, look, you got to do two things. One, to know what you want, and two, tell me. My job is to make it happen.
Mhm.
We're going to make that happen in this classroom, in this family for you. And when they leave here, my same kids who are amazing in my room, they're going to go be animals in some other room because that's what they do in that room. And they're going to be crazy in the hallway but I want people to know that your classroom can be a completely different place. And I want groups of teachers to take on that for their hallway. You like as an AP and as a principal, man, like
Mhm.
there's the hallways. There's some hallways that are very different than other hallways. And we can have a culture for our hallway. I want teachers to take that responsibility back. Now, from like, how do we do that? It really comes down to getting crystal clear on like the three big questions is what we talked about already. What do we want for our kids? As a result of our kids spending their lives with us, we're the most influential people they're ever going to have. Ultimately, what's the real lesson of my classroom? And why? Like, why am I here? Why this school? Right now, you could go get a teaching
Oh
job
man.
anywhere. So why
Yeah.
these kids? Why this school? Why this campus? Why this subject matter? To have a deep, meaningful answer for why are we doing this, and who do we need to be as a school family for our kids? Who do I need to be for my kids? And if we're not crystal clear and have that clarity for those three answers, without that clarity, man, it's really hard to impact culture because if you go back in time and think about the best year you've ever had, I'm talking it was amazing. You felt like you were in that flow state every day and it was positive. You felt it was rewarding. It was awesome. It was fun and kids are learning. Everyone's engaged. If you think about that, like that year, what the secret ingredient is in that recipe that people tend to forget is clarity. Like
Mhm.
everybody was on the same page. We all knew what the mission was. We all knew what we were doing every day. And being clear, like right now, I feel like most teachers, not all, but most, especially the ones that are struggling, really lack clarity in what they want for their kids and why am I here? They don't have a good answer about why we're here and who do I need to be. I think we've lost it along the way.
Where do we get that back?
That here it is, man. What I have found the easiest, I shouldn't say easiest, the simple, it's nothing easy about it. The simplest way is when we get a group of teachers in the same room at the same time having a deep, meaningful conversation about it. Because what they tend to realize is one, we're all struggling with the same issues. And two, deep down inside, we all want the same thing for our kids, no matter what what teach. And we're here because we love them. But to have that meaningful conversation together, like it takes someone to facilitate it,
Mhm.
first of all. It's easy for me because it's way easier for me because I'm not part of their family. Like I'm coming in from the outside and I don't know about the relationships. I don't know about the weird unresolved issues and challenges between people.
Right.
I don't know anything. I don't have the stories, the layers of emotion on the anger and the frustration. There's none of that.
Right.
So I just go in not know. So it's way easier for me. But there has to be someone who can facilitate those conversations. I've always said, there that should be a regular part of professional development for team leaders, department chairs, is being able to have understanding how to facilitate meaningful conversations among teachers. Because if you don't, they have natural conversations. To have a meaningful, emotionally based productive conversation isn't natural. It's not like part of human nature. So what's natural for teachers is to be empathetic. And that's dangerous because the reason it's dangerous is because when somebody comes in and joins the lunch bunch, they just warmed up orange chicken lean cuisine, and they sit down and they say, "Oh my gosh, I had Terrence today. Oh, I know he's the worst." And they go on and on
Mm-hmm.
because remember what that is. That's loving. Like that's empathy. To connect with somebody on their challenges and to identify with them. Me too. Oh, well, you're
Oh
lucky
yeah.
you don't have William because if you had William, you would know. And they go back and forth trying to one up each other to let each other know that we're struggling too, which is very loving. But it's that toxic downward spiral of empathy
Mm-hmm.
that reinforces just the negativity and so I think there has to be that person on staff who is an expert facilitating positive conversations about what's really happening for kids and teachers in the classroom.
It just takes that one to just
That's
say,
the thing. That's the
it's
amazing
just
part,
the
dude.
one.
Yeah, it just takes a one personality and the one that can turn everything around. People always ask me if I follow sports, and there's no teams that I follow as much to follow coaches. I love to see where a coach is
Mm-hmm.
going to go because they're a winner. They're going to turn this thing around. Like that wasn't a fluke. This is what they do.
Right. Right.
Like I love that, and one person really can. And again, we're brainwashed to think it's the principal. It can be anybody on campus. It could be any teacher in any hallway in any classroom.
It's man, it's so important to have. Mm, it, because that lunchroom can become very toxic. It can become a place where you can drive off some great people.
And again, it's not there. There's no it's not intentional. It's not ill will wished. It's just a very natural thing to
Mm-hmm.
talk about how hard it
It's
is.
like that mirroring effect. You know,
Yeah,
when we smile at one another, it's just natural to smile right back, right? I mean, our brain tells us, oh, we're supposed to smile back, and if I laugh, you'll laugh back. It'd be like, if somebody gets the hiccups, you get the hiccups.
right.
So I mean, and the same thing is happening there, which is very simple to. Oh yeah, oh I want to feel better about my experience with Timmy too. So I get that. Uh, so just so you know how I have a self-imposed hour. It's
Let's do it. Yeah,
and so I've got a couple questions I gotta ask you about. So
come on.
Fort Bend County. Somebody said fastest growing county in the nation.
Oh, all these places are insane, man. Here's I can tell you when I wasn't in Fort Bend. It was in Harris County, just north of Fort
Okay.
Bend. But all these populations when I was still teaching, we we were I taught a brand new school. And within just a few years of building the school, we had over 70 portable buildings at the high
Oh
school.
my gosh.
And we're building two high schools within just a mile of the same school I was at. And as soon as we built them, they're immediately overcrowded. Like at one point, we had over 5,000 kids in a school that's built for 2,200 kids. And I mean, this tells you how many portable buildings are. We ran out of numbers. So like we had little letter words, and so the name I was in portable building number Gamma
Oh
because we ran out of numbers. So we went to the
wow.
Greek alphabet, right? Yeah. So it's all these districts, man.
My brother moved down to the Richmond, Texas area
Yeah,
about
yeah.
9 years ago. He works for Access Health down there,
Mhm.
and he was telling me it's just crazy that these corn or these cotton fields that he once drove by, there's now a Target,
Yeah,
or Target has purchased the land, or somebody has purchased the land. They're not built yet, but they know it's coming. So they've
yeah.
got that property already, and like crazy amounts of community planning going on just to prepare for that next wave of growth and where they're moving to. So man, that's just. Uh, I watched a little bit of it here on the north side of Indianapolis when I worked down in Carmel, and just watching the Hamilton County around Indianapolis grow like crazy. Still continues to, but not like that.
Yeah.
That just seems like um, something really, really special to watch. I don't know what else to call it. I don't know if there's
It's
a
chaos, man. But I'll
okay,
tell you, there's a whole lot of rich um rice farmers.
okay. Like because they sold their land, or
Yeah.
okay, yeah, absolutely. My next question, big question here. Tell us about homecoming mums.
Well, here's the crazy thing, brother, is not many people, if you're not from Texas, you probably don't know about it, but what has happened years ago, the homecoming mom thing was during the homecoming game. It is just tradition that the boy, you get a homecoming date, and now there's like this homecoming proposal you have to do to be like Instagram worthy. And so you get yourself a homecoming date, but you got to get her a mom. And years ago, this was an actual flower, like a
Okay.
real live flower that is decorated with the spirit ribbons that matches the school colors and the whole bit, maybe a little plastic football that hangs from it. But since then, it is it is this monstrosity that if people don't know, you got to Google Texas homecoming moms, and it is crazy. And kids will spend hundreds and if not thousands of dollars on this what it is. It's a sculpture with a plastic flower, and they light up and they make noise. It is absolutely insane. Some of them, it's like it's like a reverse backpack. They come with shoulder
Oh my
harnesses.
gosh.
Back in the day, used to the girls his blouse or her t-shirt, whatever she's wearing at school. But now they have like these shoulder harnesses because they're so big, and it's almost as if like your value as a person is based on the size of the mom that you receive. you know, your love for your 15-year-old date, as a young boy, can only be determined by how much you spent on her silly homecoming month that you bought from the grocery store. Dude, these things are wild.
Well, I asked because I've seen a picture of you
Yeah,
donning a homecoming mum,
it's
and
bigger than
it
me.
was bigger than you. It was absolutely insane, and I thought, man, I got to ask him about that and find out what's going on.
But here's a funny thing. I was just speaking in Louisiana, and of all places, and they're making fun of the homecoming moms, and I thought, well, the irony is as we're speaking about homecoming moms, here we are eating a king cake.
That's right.
And if people don't know what a king cake is, it has a naked little baby that's supposed to represent Jesus hidden somewhere inside the cake. So I'm thinking, you think mums are weird? I'm looking for a naked baby, plastic baby in my king cake. That's what's weird.
We had a teacher in Madison. It was Mrs. Cole. She was a Mardi Gras fanatic. Like she had been in the parade multiple times. I think with her husband's work or something, and she loved Mardi Gras. And she would teach that. She would teach about Mardi Gras in her eighth grade language arts class. And next thing you know, like a week later, there would be naked babies all over our school. Kids would go
Right.
online and buy them in bulk and then just put
Right.
them everywhere and be like, why are there naked babies? And, Mrs. Cole, she's
Right.
teaching, but man, she was lights out, like so excited to teach about about Mardi Gras, and the kids loved it. They totally
Yeah.
bought in. She'd share some videos and the different parades. From an outsider's point of view, I just saw Mardi Gras as this one big parade that happened. I had no idea there were like
Oh,
multiples
this
and
is a month worse. So you first have to be in a crew. It's like, where there's like a parade crew, where there's like a Mardi Gras crew. So the families for generations have been together in the same crew, and they have their own float and their own traditions, and it lasts a month or more. I forget how long. And then all these little ones going in all these different little towns around
yeah,
Louisiana.
that's crazy.
Louisiana is like a whole different country, my friend. It's as soon as you cross the border, it's like you're living in it's a whole different world.
Been there once. Went down there to repossess a car that was that was parked. Somebody went and traveled with the circus, and left their car sitting down like on the docks or somewhere near the docks of New Orleans, and they flew me down there to bring this car back. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. Now, New Orleans wasn't. It was an incredible
Right.
experience. It was really cool. But that car, no heat, no air, no cruise control. It was absolutely terrifying. I remember driving through Mississippi and looking up, and it's like 7:30 at night, and it was 103 degrees, and I'm going through the Mississippi Delta with no air conditioning and a stick shift with no cruise. It was terrible, terrible. Man,
I'm surprised you repossessed it, man. Let
uh,
them have it. Good Lord.
that's honest to God, it would have been cheaper. It would have been cheaper. Well, dude, so happy to have you on. I'm so excited for everything you're doing. What is up next for Hal Bowman?
Listen, we're going to. I think this year we have a new focus. I'm focused on. There's a demographic of kid that no one's talking about that is really struggling. I was about to make a video about this today, and here's the thing: we track demographics. This is what we do. Like we collect data and we see how kids are doing, and we know them all. We can track academic achievement by race and ethnicity, and we can see who's doing well and who's struggling. And we can look at we languages spoken in the home and how much money the parents make, and if they own a house, rent a house, or they're homeless, or if they have two parents, if they're married or just cohabitating, if they're one parent, which one do they have? A grandparent home, no parent home, foster parent home. We even track if they have high speed internet. But there's one thing we don't track in demographics, and that is the difference in academic achievement between girls and boys.
Mm-hmm.
And because we don't track it, we don't notice it. And because we don't notice it, we don't talk about it. And that is boys who are struggling. And if we have never seen a decline in academic achievement like we have seen over the last 2 decades, really, with boys. And right now we're at the point where boys are 4.5 times more likely to be expelled from school than girls. 73% of kids with a learning disability are boys. We have boys of 80% of kids taking Ritalin are boys. 5 times as many boys are dyslexic than girls. And when they graduate from high school, what the result is now of the top 10% of kids achieving in high school, 70% of the top 10% of the graduating class are girls, while 70% of the bottom 10% are boys. And downstream from that, going to college, right now, less than more over 60% are girls. Less than 40% are boys. Graduating with a degree, it's 2 to 1. There's 2 girls for every 1 boy graduating from college.
Wow.
And even further downstream from that, if you look at young men 25 years old and under, those guys, those young men 25 years and under, 30% of young men are completely dependent, doing nothing. I'm not saying they're living at home because they're getting their MBA, or they're living at home and going to trade school, or they're living at going to school. No, they're doing nothing. 30% of 25 years and under. And it's a crisis, man. And no one's talking about it. And and downstream from that in our society, like it's really going to have a traumatic impact here in the next few years. So I really want to take a look at what we're doing for boys.
I've heard you speak about boys' brain age before. Is that something you've touched on? I believe it was you I was listening to talking about
Well, here,
the age of a girl's brain versus the age of a boy's brain.
yeah, man, there's so much research to that. And we've always known boys are a few years behind. I think it's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But when we start looking at first of all, for a boy to be competitive academically for girls going to college and these girls are 17, 18 years old, but that boy really, I mean, they're 14 or 15 at the most in terms of where the girl is. But there's this one part of the frontal lobe of the brain, and I don't remember the name of it, but it's this tiny little part that governs impulse control. And if you take a look at that one, just that one little part, for a boy's brain to look like a girl's brain when she is 10 years old, the boy's going to be 25 years old by the time when his brain is matured in that one area that governs impulse control to be a 10 to 12-year-old girl. He's going to be 25. So like that alone, like really what we're doing as parents and teachers, we're trying to govern the front lobe of a brain of the boy's brain because they're wild, man. And so, but it really affects the kids academically, and there's so, man, I'm at the point where I'm almost ready to say what we're doing in school, in classrooms, in a traditional setting is almost unnatural for a boy. This whole sit down, be quiet, do what you're told.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think for yourself. Don't make mistakes. Like for most boys, their learning style is up and moving and pushing and shoving and being active and loud. And like that is their natural state at that age. And it's really, really difficult for them to have any kind of success in that traditional rules based setting.
As a dean, AP, principal, I can tell you those numbers don't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean,
Sadly,
just
sadly, because
anecdotally,
I've
yeah,
just seen it.
yeah,
I've lived
anecdotally, you
that.
can walk down the hallway of any school, in elementary school, junior high school, when there's if you walk down a hallway, the kids that got kicked out of class and they're waiting for the teacher to come out and address it, they're all boys.
Yep.
I mean, they're generally, I mean, there's some girls sprinkled in, but the kids that line up to see you in the front office, they're boy. The kids that are in tutoring and got taken out of recess because they failed the
Mm.
test and they got to go to tutoring, they're all boys, which by the way is traumatic for a boy to miss recess.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real struggle. It's an issue, and it just no one's talking about it.
There was a book. Um, oh gosh, I think it's called Help for Billy. Have you
Hmm.
read this book?
Yeah, there's a few of them. The latest book that just came out is written by Richard Reeves of the Brookings Institute. It's called Of Boys and Men, and it talks about this shifting demographic and what has happened and why. And man, listen, I could talk about this for days, but just to give you an idea, the whole thing changed in 1972 because girls were falling behind boys. There were
Sure.
13 points behind boys, and Title IX kicked off,
Title
and
IX.
I'm not sure there's been a a better social initiative than that. It was amazing. Within just a few years, it was even Steven, boys and girls. But what's changed is we haven't stopped any of those programs for girls, nor should we.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still nothing for boys. And so those girls are thriving. And I want that to keep going.
Absolutely.
But like if you look at just think about, I mean, just something we all like we'll see like STEM camps for girls where girls can go to some with the local university for a
Mm-hmm.
week, and oftentimes it's free. There are hundreds of those around the nation. There's nothing like that for boys.
Right.
Or this I've even seen there's a leadership charter school. It said the young ladies or the young women's leadership school down the street from me. There's no young men's leadership school. Like what, there's in fact, when you look at gender specific scholarships, which there's scholarships out there for college just for boys and some just for girls. There's 92% of them are for girls. They're twice as many girls are going to college anyway.
Wow.
And they have 10 times more scholarships than boys. And it's really fascinating. And I want that to continue for girls for sure because it's working and they're thriving. But what I also want to do is get the conversation started and let's take a look at what we can do for boys to catch them up.
And with the amount of brain research that's going on right now, I mean, the things we're learning about the brain, I think it is. I think you're right. That's the next door. That's the next door to go through, is start looking at gender specific practices in some way, shape, or form. Something has to be done. I appreciate that you're putting that effort forth out there because, like I said, I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've lived that for the past 5-6 years of seeing just boy after boy come through. I'd always kind of thought my head worked in a way where I thought, all right, is it a issue where, number one, girls, women are more relational naturally anyway. I think just our roles historically, thousands of years of continual development tells us that the relational piece for women and girls happens. And boys are more physical, just that labor piece, the care, the whatever. But I always wondered too, something that I've always felt like my mom didn't understand my outbursts, and I often, as I got older and I got married, my wife didn't understand, some of my outbursts. Um, and I wondered, is it because they've never experienced that shot of testosterone? And as a middle school teacher, I thought to myself, here are boys who all of the sudden at 12, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, for the first time in their life, testosterone hits that brain and they don't know how to react. And, see boys at fourth grade, they can push and shove and laugh and ha ha ha, and they move on. But in sixth, seventh grade, now somebody's watching.
Right.
And now I'm starting to feel like, I'm not going to be pushed around. And they don't understand what's happening in their own brain because of that new chemical that's being introduced. I wonder if that's some of it. And that's just me, thinking without science backing me. I am not a scientist. I have not done research here, folks. Just
Right.
my thoughts.
Yeah, and also it is that for sure. There's great a book. I think it's called T. Maybe I can't. Stands for testosterone. I think
Hmm.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's a great book that addresses all of that. And in addition to that, when these boys do have these troll outbursts and moments where they push and shove and all that stuff, and they get in trouble, well, now they feel like something's wrong with them
Mm.
because they're in a school setting and there's all kind of rules, and people are at no, what is wrong with you? Which is now sets
Oh,
the plants the seed for something's wrong with me. Because
right.
now here's this adult asking me what's wrong with me, and they don't know, and I don't know what why don't what, and so it really is a challenging environment. And maybe even more so the more stringent we get and narrow focus with rules and regulations and what's acceptable and all that is it's really really confusing, particularly for boys, for all kids, for sure. But it's a very confusing time for boys to grow up. And what does it
Hmm.
mean to be masculine? What does it mean to be a strong male? What does that mean specifically? And now these kids are left alone with their phone trying to discover this for
Oh,
themselves.
gosh.
And it creates all kinds of problems for young men.
Jordan Peterson, I'm sure you're familiar with Jordan Peterson,
Yeah.
but he has a great conversation about just masculinity and how to be just that strong male piece. Where I think one of the things he says in there is um, he wants boys to realize they can, they can protect themselves or whatever. They should have that heart of, I will do whatever it takes, but also know that the real the real joy in that is not having to. Understanding you
Right.
have that power, and I can't remember exactly how it's said, and I think it may be, even a biblical verse, but that piece where you have that ability,
Right.
but the
I
ability
forget the
to
word he
restrain it.
uses. It's something like warrior or
Yeah,
something.
something. Yeah,
But you're that way you can restrain it and not necessarily use it.
100%.
You know. And now, we have all these, I think people are confused when we have these, internet personalities that come to the forefront, like Andrew Peterson or Rogan or, Andrew Tate. And kids and people think, oh well, these boys want to they just want to be, and they want to be like Andrew Tate. And it's not true.
Mm.
They don't want to be. What they want is they want to feel the way he feels. They want to feel confident and feel independent and feel like they matter. They want to feel they're significant, to feel that they're strong. They want to feel like they see how he feels about it, and they think to themselves, I want to feel that way about me. Maybe I'll act that way. And that's when we get into the problem, because
Mhm.
they start misbehaving. But what they really want is to feel powerful, to feel empowered and significant, feel like they matter.
And to know that it's okay,
Yeah.
but the the real prize in that is the restraint of it. Knowing I have that, I don't have to use it. I think that is a man. That's a feeling of, I don't know how to explain it, man. You know, it's a power you possess that you don't even have to use. It's almost a
Right.
superpower, And we think about, Superman or something, and Superman was incredible, right? But as time went on, he got even more and more powerful. And Peterson talks about this as well, where all of a sudden he has every power in the world and nothing can harm him. All of a sudden it's like, I'm not interested in Superman anymore.
Yeah.
There's got to be something about us that is vulnerable, and that needs to be okay. I think that needs to be normalized as well. That there is a vulnerability to us. That
Yeah, that's definitely part of the strength for
yeah,
sure. And that's where it gets confusing for boys and, well, men, where like where how does that fit in, and how is that strong and being vulnerable, and aren't those conflicting ideas? It's a really time for, to be not just a boy, but as adults to be a role model for
hmm
these young men.
and that circles back to what we talked about early on. You're mentioning all these you know, fallen heroes. And I'm air quoting again, folks, heroes of the past, where the people we'd put on pedestals, the Bill Cosbys of the world, and so on and so forth. Where at one point he had a book, Bill Cosby on fatherhood, and that have
Right.
fallen, and people they have access to see all of the atrocities there, and our kids do as well. And you were looking for your phone earlier. I found mine. It's right here in front of me. And boy, there's more computing power right here in the palm of my hand than Ronald Reagan had, than
Yeah.
George Bush one had. Like right there. How that frightens me, man. It frightens me for these kids that have access to things that aren't. I don't know how to put it without sounding weird, but just quite honestly, that are poisonous. There's a lot of poison out there.
It really, and it goes into the brain and it stays. And I think that's the one thing we don't understand. And this is one of the reasons of the downfall and the challenges of boys is with social media. And if you look at the research on how it affects boys and girls differently, yes, it's so traumatic in terms of the self-esteem for young ladies. Absolutely.
Sure.
And when we look at how it affects boys, is what we don't talk about is this dopamine release. So when a kid is on his cell phone and he's, as a young teen, a preteen, or in his teen years, and he's looking at prank videos on YouTube, he's looking at porn, he's looking at all this wild social media and scrolling through Instagram and TikTok is just image after image. And the brain lights up for a boy. The only way that they have been able to identify like a match for that and like an analogy is when somebody is jumping out of an airplane or they've looked at brains as Navy SEALs are doing these training exercises with bombs going off and all the explosions around. Like that same sort of excitement is what a boy's brain looks like when he's on his phone. So when we start looking about why boys aren't achieving, well, there you go. Because
Right.
like you and I, when we were growing up, if you wanted to have a dopamine release, which we didn't know what it was back
Right.
then, but you had to play sports. You had to get on your bike and build a ramp and jump and break your collarbone like you're supposed to. You had to go do something. Well, these kids don't have to do anything. And so when people talk about, well, it's not just that, it's like these boys get in trouble and they don't even care. Well, it's not that they don't care. It's they never even get to the emotion of caring because when they act out, they misbehave, they say something, you and I would feel embarrassed and feel shame and feel guilt and regret like we're supposed to, then we'd fix our behavior. But this is a generation of kid when a boy does that and they say insulting or whatever they do, as soon as they feel a hint of shame, regret, guilt, or any negative emotion, they get on their phone, they start scrolling, and that dopamine is released, and it masks all those emotions that they're supposed to be feeling. They never get to that, so it doesn't change their behavior.
Wow, that's incredibly insightful. I think it's important that you continue to do that work and get it out there. And you're right. I mean, that work has continually been done on the other side. For girls, and as a father who raised two incredible young women that I have nothing but the highest of hopes for. The opportunities were there for them, and I'm so thankful for that. But I also wonder, have we overshadowed the needs of boys in implementing all the things we've done to make sure that we're caring for women and for young, for girls and women.
Yeah.
And
I think
I want that to continue.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
100%.
Like, I just want, I want to, just like all it took in 1972 was we noticed what was happening with our young girls that were falling behind. We got the conversation started and we took action. And it's been awesome ever since. What I want to do is do the same thing. I want people to notice. Let's start the conversation. What's happening, boys, so that we can take action.
Man, I appreciate you. Where can everybody find you?
Everywhere at Hal Bowman, HalBowman on social media platforms at Hal Bowman. And I promise I'll get back in there and get active. And then also halbowman.com.
Man, I love you, brother. Appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the great work. Keep keeping. You can tell I was not a language arts teacher.
I don't give up, man. I don't quit. Don't worry. I'll keep going.
Right. Yeah, so keep doing what you're doing, man. We so appreciate you, and thanks for coming on here. Man, so thankful. Folks, Hal Bowman, I am so pumped. But I'll get over it. Like, I'll have to listen to this about 6 times. Oh my God, you actually did talk to Hal. But thanks for everybody for listening. I appreciate you all so much. See ya.